Hi, I'm Jessica Bayhaw with Great Rivers Regional System for Addiction Care, and I am one of the prevention education specialists. I cover Kanawha and Jackson counties, and today we are continuing our This Is My Story series, and today we have Bernard with us, and he is here to tell his story, and so I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to him and let him tell his story. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Jessica. My name is Bernard, and I'm a person in long-term recovery. It's important for me to share my story so that others don't have to suffer in silence like I did for so long. So it's important for me to live my recovery out loud because my downfall was so public. So I'm going to start from the beginning. My sobriety date is March 23rd of 2017. And I'm from the west side of Charleston, West Virginia. I come from a not so traditional family. A lot of my family were drug dealers, and we all lived on the west side of Charleston. My grandfather, he owned like a block of 7th Avenue, the 1800 block, and it was right across the street from one of the biggest housing projects in the city. Like I said, a lot of my family sold drugs. One of my most traumatic experiences that I can remember as a child was the DEA busting in our door and seizing like trash bags of pot from my dad and like $80,000 in cash. And my parents had to go to jail for a while, and I had to go stay with an aunt and uncle for a little bit. My grandmother, she was also a drug dealer. She sold meth and marijuana and pills, and people that knew my grandma always liked to make jokes at me, and they say 1250. The reason they say 1250 is because my grandmother, she wouldn't sell just like a dime bag of weed. She sold $25 bags. And if you wanted something smaller, she would rip it in half and make you pay $12.50 for it. And she would, if you didn't have the $2.50, you couldn't get it. I remember as a child, my first experience with any type of substance was alcohol. They would have, my uncles would have poker games at the house, and they would let me run to the refrigerator to get them a beer, and I got to crack it open and take the first drink for everyone that I got them. And when I was about 5 years old, before I started kindergarten, we went to the beach, and my mom and dad let my uncles watch me, who were teenagers at the time, so that they can go out, and they ended up getting me drunk and had me making obscene gestures off the balcony to girls below. And I was stealing moonshine from my grandfather at an early age. And one thing that I can remember from my childhood is I had a lot of those isms early on. I was the type of kid who would haul off and just hit other kids for no reason. A lot of my family was on drugs, and to me, the way that I grew up, it didn't seem like anything was wrong with it until I got in about 7th grade, and kids used to come over to my grandmother's and stay the night with me, and my uncle Wayne would get on crack. And he would come and ask my grandma for $20 and say that he wouldn't be back, and then he'd come back and we would have to lock him out of the house, and he'd get a ladder and climb on the roof and climb through windows, and then go over to the projects across the street and fight with the neighbors, and all the time, I had these friends who come from good families and stuff watching this like what the heck is going on. But I did well in school. I was well liked by my peers. I was good at sports. I made good grades. And my mom and dad tried to give me everything that they could. They made sure that I went to school dressed in the best clothes and the best shoes. And my grandmother, she took care of most of our family. I come from probably the biggest family in Charleston. I'm the only child, but I had like 100 cousins. Whenever I was in school, I had a football injury in ninth grade, and this is where I got my first taste of opiates. I had that aha moment when a light bulb just went off in my head, like, yeah, I like this. So that's where I really got my first taste of it at. The summer after ninth grade, I tried cocaine for the first time. I started selling marijuana just to be like the cool guy. And I got a fake ID at 16, and I became the providers for the parties in high school. And you know, I always like being that guy because it's always been about stroking my ego, you know. After high school, I could have really went to any college in the state of West Virginia that wasn't private. I had a sponsorship through the Rehabilitation Center. And I chose to go to Marshall because my dad said that he would get me a car so that I can drive back and forth on the weekends and when I didn't have class and stuff. So I went down to Huntington, and it's all I did was party. The first semester that I was there, I was placed on academic probation for drinking in the dorms, and then I just partied my way through that, and I didn't make it a whole year down there. I moved back to Charleston 2003, and I started working for Charleston newspapers in the circulation department, and I thought life was pretty good. And this was around the time that prescription pills really took off around here. I remember calling my drug dealer up, and I told him to bring me 10 Lortab 10s. So about an hour later, he shows up, and he has this little tiny pill. And I was really mad at first. And I was like, you know, what is this? Like, no, I want my Lortabs. I want 10 of them. And he's like, no, I want you to try this. This is called an OC80. So he showed me how to do it. He took one, he put it in his mouth and licked it, and took his shirt and wiped off the coating. And he pulls out this little hose clamp thingy, and he starts rubbing the peel against it. So he was shaving the peel down. And I was at my cousin Steve's house, and Steve's a big part of my story too. He'll come in later. But from the moment that we both tried that, I think I was hooked. It was like another light bulb went off in my head, and I was like, wow. It had a hold on me from the get-go. I ended up getting with a girl that I had started kindergarten with and graduated high school with. We met back up when we were like 22, 23. We started dating, and I had my first child, Isaac, in 2008. And that's about the time that I got my first DUI. I had fell asleep behind the wheel of the car after I had done Oxycontin and Xanax bars together. We were living at Southmore Apartments in South Charleston, and I had fell asleep behind the wheel trying to get back home. You know, I didn't think anything of it. I was like, you know, everybody gets DUIs. But it wasn't even 3 months later that I got my second DUI. This time I was under the influence of Oxycontin and Xanax bars again, and I had sideswiped a man on the interstate, and I could have killed him. Thank God that I didn't. And my first two kids' mother, Laura, she ended up leaving me. She got tired of my crap, and she got rid of me and moved on with her life. And so I moved back in with my parents on the west side of Charleston, and I isolated myself. And I wouldn't say that I became sober. I got dry for a little bit. And I started going back to college at West Virginia State University for a while. I was studying behavioral health science and social work at the same time. So I ended up getting an internship at Covenant House, running the drop-in center there, and they ended up hiring me on full time. and I had a friend, his name's Ronnie. He's a big part of my story too. He was working at the Kanawha County Courthouse at the time. So Ronnie and I, we ended up starting using together, and we would ride to work and from work together every day. So, and at the time we were getting Roxy 30s after work, and one day we couldn't find him, and Ronnie's like, "Hey man, I tried heroin for the first time the other day. I know where to get some." And I was like, "No man, I don't do that." So, and he talked to me and told me what it was like, and from what I had heard from other people, it was just like taking a pain pill. It was just like intensified. So we went and got heroin that day, and about 48 hours later, I lost my job at Covenant House for coming to work high. At this time, an ex-girlfriend that I had dated in high school had contacted me over the internet and asked me, did I want to go out with her husband and her husband's sister. So, I agreed to it, and I went out with them, and I was supposed to be like going on a blind date with the husband's sister, but being the type of person that I was then, I went after the married woman. I had a problem in my addiction too of dating married women. Both of my sons were born to women who were married to other men. So to make a long story short, Miranda and I, we ended up getting together. She ended up divorcing her husband, and I ended up having a third child, Preston. And our relationship was toxic from the get-go. We fought and we argued all the time, and I was just not a good person. I was overwhelmed too. She had a son from her previous marriage, and I had 3 kids at the time. And one day, we were at our house. We had moved to Dunbar, and the kids were playing in the house. I was trying to take care of Preston. He was a little baby. I think my daughter was in the kitchen helping Miranda, and Jackson and Isaac were playing Frisbee in the house. So I ended up taking the Frisbee, and I put it on top of this big box TV that we had at the time. It was setting up on top of a dresser. So I go back into the other room, and I hear a big boom. So I run in the room, and the TV had fell on Isaac because he had tried to climb up there and get the Frisbee. So we call an ambulance and rush him to the hospital. He ended up breaking his clavicle bone, and the hospital contacted CPS, and there was an investigation. My kids were taken from me. I had to jump through their hoops. I had to go to monitored visitation center at the YWCA. I had to go to parenting classes. And at this time, I think I got my first bit of sobriety. They sent me to Prestera outpatient treatment in Dunbar at the time. And I put together a good 6 or 7 months. I was willing to do whatever it took to get my children back. But the day that the judge gave me my children back, I went and got high. I remember this like it was yesterday. I called up my drug dealer, and I told him to bring me dope, pain pills. Prescription pain pills is dope to me today. So then again, I'm in the court system with my children. I lose them. I have to jump through hoops again, go through the YWCA to see them. But this time, I'm not willing to quit drugs. I'm willing to manipulate and do everything that I can in order to beat a drug test instead of just quitting. About that time, Miranda had got tired of my crap too. She divorced me. And around that time, I got my third DUI. I was working on a campaign for a guy who was running for Congress. And after after we got off that evening, a girl and I that was working on the campaign together decided to go out to the Sky Lounge out up on Capitol Street. And when we were leaving, a cop got behind us and they pulled us over, and I got my third DUI. A little bit after that, I decided to seek some treatment. So I went down to a place in Texas, in Longview, Texas. It was a religious program. So they encouraged me to pray away my problems. We studied the Bible for 28 days. I took their classes and stuff, and I come back to Charleston, and I thought I was healed. And at this time, I got this thought in my head. I was like, I've worked so many campaigns and stuff, and I've got people elected, so I could get myself elected for office. So that's when I went up and filled the papers out to run for city council of Charleston, West Virginia. And I ended up winning that election just by a few votes. It was a grassroots campaign. I got out and knocked on everybody's door in the ward and talked to them. And at this time, I was doing well. I had a couple months sober and stuff, and I was still able to hide it at the time. No one really knew about my substance use except the people that I used with. And after I won the election, there was a situation with my cousin Steve, who I told you about before. Steve had given some heroin to his dad, and his dad took the heroin on a plate back in the back room. He had a girlfriend at the time that was staying there. So he goes back, and they had been doing Nerf pills that day. And Big Stevie passes out in the chair. So when he wakes up, the girl that was there was dead. She had overdosed on heroin and other substances that they were doing earlier that day. And there was a big investigation, and the police came and seized my cousin's phone. And then they found incriminating text messages between the two of us. So they came and seized my cell phone as well. And they were able to use me because I was a public servant. They could put it all over the news and make it a big deal, just so that they could try to get a conviction on my cousin, because he was actually the first person in West Virginia that was ever charged with murder for distributing heroin to somebody. So my life was just a big circus at that time. And I overindulged. I started using more because I was all over the news. I didn't know how to deal with it. And I dove deeper into drugs, and that's what helped me cope with it. It was bad. I had Bob Aaron knocking on my door trying to talk to me every day. At that time, I ended up getting with another girl who liked meth, and she told me, hey, I stopped doing heroin with meth. You should try it. So I was like, I've tried it before, but I don't like uppers, but I ended up trying it, and I got on meth real bad, and meth made me crazy, really crazy. And at this time, I got my fourth DUI. I had been uptown at an art walk and had some drinks, and then went to the bars and excuse me. And I ended up getting pulled over on the way home at like 3:00 in the morning. And this time I was in office. So it was all over the news again. And I didn't care at that time because I was using. They could put me all over the news or whatever. The sad thing about like my dad's gave me a couple houses in my life, and every time he did, I let people come and trap them out. Like I let people come and sell drugs out of my house just so I could get drugs. I let women prostitute themselves out of my house, whatever it took for me to get high. I had no morals or values. and I was really bad on the meth. I had lost so much weight. I looked bad. And I was going and digging in dumpsters at night. So I ended up getting with a guy one night who had a buggy, and we knew it was trash night. And here I am, a city councilman on the environment and recycling committee. We ended up getting pulled over by the cops, and because we were digging in the trash, and they found a paraphernalia, I will say, on me, in my back pocket that I had forgot that was there. And they were able to blow that up in the news too. And of all the things to humble me, this digging in the trash and the dumpsters when I was twacked out of my mind on meth was the only thing to really humble me. I hid out in my house for like the next 2 weeks, I'd say. And I remember there was a lady named Rachel Thaxton who had reached out to me. She had opened a women's center over in my ward on the west side. And she had contacted me and wanted my support during a few months prior to that. And I kind of brushed it off. And I talked to her online a little bit and told her, how I was struggling. I told her I might want to seek treatment, and then I changed my mind and ended up blocking her on Facebook. But it got so bad at that point that I remembered that she offered me a bed at a place called Recovery Point of Huntington. And so one night I stayed up all night. I used the rest of the drugs that I had. And it was cold. It was in March of 2017. It was really cold out. The electric had got cut off. And if I went to the corner of my house and held my phone just right, I could pick up Wi-Fi. So I went and done that. And I sent her a message and said, hey, can you still get me that bed in Huntington? I'm serious. I'm ready to go. And this was like at 2:00 in the morning, but I'd go back every 15 minutes and check my messages to see if she had got it. And when she got to work in the morning, she ended up getting the message and said, hey, BJ's got a bed for you down in Huntington. Can you get there? And I called my dad, who I hadn't spoke to in some time. And I told him, I was ready to go. And he came and picked me up. He fed me, took me to Burger King and got me some food, and took me to Family Dollar to get some underwear and stuff. And I always tell people when I was in the program or working there or a peer mentor that I came into Recovery Point with just like dirty underwear, because that's what I had. I didn't have much when I got there. And because a lot of people are so concerned, like, I can't go to treatment because I don't got clothes, I don't got cigarettes. And let me tell you something, I never went without at this place. I had so many brothers there. I never went without a cigarette. I never went without a snack. I never went without a pop or anything, because that brotherhood there, we all watched each other's back. I didn't know this until after I had graduated, but I guess the executive director was in there when I came in, and I was so twacked out of my mind on meth. I was asking Matt Boggs for a pen and paper because I wanted to write Danny Jones, the mayor of Charleston, a letter. And I don't remember this, but he told me about it later after I started working there. And that's kind of funny. I didn't sleep the first 2 nights that I was there in detox, but when I finally did crash, I slept for about 5 days. And I'd wake up and I'd eat, and then I'd go back to bed. And after that, they sent me upstairs. It's called OTS, Off the Streets. It's the first part of the program. It's really where I got my discipline at. I didn't have that as an adult. The lights come on at early 6:30 in the morning. You have to do chores, and this is the part of the program where you're trudging. You're walking to class. You're taking your recovery classes, and you're doing your meetings. And I spent about 90 days up there because I ended up getting restarted. for using a cell phone when I had left the building on the weekend. So I learned real fast not to break the rules. I didn't have it easy by any means in that program. And I thank God and the staff members there that I did not have it easy, that they did not let me manipulate, and they gave it to me how they got it, because that's the reason that I've been so successful today. I had been to plenty of detoxes. I had been to Highland and maybe stayed a night or a couple hours, or a 28-day program, but I had never been to a place where everybody there is just like me. And that's the power of peer recovery. Everybody that worked there had graduated the program. They knew exactly what I was going through. So I felt at home right there from the get-go. And that's my brotherhood. That'll always be my home. I finished the program in 7 months and 1 week. I ended up going to the peer mentor's office and doing a peer mentorship, where I worked in the office for 3 months. From there, I ended up getting hired on at the administrative office. Matt Boggs gave me my first shot out of treatment and my first opportunity. And I'll be forever grateful to Matt for giving me that opportunity. I worked there for about 9 or 10 months doing administrative duties, some human resources, and just really anything that they needed me to do. And I loved it there. But when I was working there, I learned that Recovery Point had got a grant to place peer recovery coaches in emergency rooms in 4 hospitals. 2 of them are in Huntington and 2 of them were in Charleston. So I ended up taking the peer recovery classes, which were free to me because I was alumni from Recovery Point. So they trained me for free. So when the interviews came around, I applied, and I ended up getting the job at CAMC General and the job at Cabell Huntington Hospital. So I had to choose which one that I wanted. And at that time, I was only maybe a year and a half sober at the time, and I wasn't ready to come back to Charleston. So I prayed about it. I talked to my sponsor about it, and I talked to my support group, and ultimately I came up that I was going to stay in Huntington. I had moved into our phase 2 house, which was like a sober living house for Recovery Point graduates. And I stayed there for about 6 months while I was working at the administrative office. And 2 of my brothers that I had went through the program with, and we decided to get a place together in Ritter Park down in Huntington. And we signed a year lease. And I had got the job at Cabell Huntington Hospital. I was working there, and I was able to walk to work. It was only 3 or 4 blocks away from us, because when we first started out, none of us had really nothing. We, Patrick, Aaron, and I, none of us had a driver's license. None of us had a car. We didn't have much money, but we were happy. We had our recovery, and we were living life to the fullest. I worked at Cabell Huntington Hospital in the emergency room for about a year, and then a position came open upstairs working with the addiction specialist in the hospital, where I would get to see the people who were admitted to the hospital, who were the critically ill patients. A lot of them had done so much damage to their body from drinking alcohol or shooting dope that they had gone septic. They had problems with their hearts, endocarditis, and things like that. So these were the people that I was going around talking to and seeing every day, and trying to link them to services, and trying to get them into recovery and show them what recovery looked like. And I'd go around and tell them my story and talk to them and see if I could do anything for them. I really loved that job. And honestly, if Cabell Huntington Hospital would have hired me on full time and gave me some benefits and stuff, I never would have looked for another job. At that time, I started working another part-time job for Mountain State Recovery Center down here in Charleston. So a guy named Joe that I had played fantasy football with, he's one of the part owners of it, and he started sending me messages on Facebook, and he wouldn't take no for an answer. So like I told him, I was like, I'm not comfortable coming down to Charleston yet. And he wouldn't take no for an answer. And he talked me into meeting up with him for coffee, but I didn't know that it was an impromptu interview. And he told me I got the job on the spot. And so I started working there part-time too, until I got offered a position with Cabin Creek Health Systems. Now I work as the care manager for their MAT program. So I work at their clinics in Kanawha Cities, where my office is, but I travel up Cabin Creek to Dawes and to Sissonville and different places like that. I really love my job, and my passion is working with people who are in medically assisted treatment programs. I got my first taste of it at Cabell Huntington Hospital, and I really think that's my calling. My life's good today. June 1st, I moved back to Charleston. I have all my children back in my life. I'm a part of their lives, a positive part. We spend lots of time together. I live close to them all. I get them on the weekends. I recently got married, and I'm about to adopt my stepdaughter. Amber and I have to be married for 6 months before they'll let me adopt her. And this is all by the grace of God, Recovery Point, and the fellowship that I choose to work. I sponsor guys. I try to give back as much as I can. I do service work. I still go to meetings. I take newcomers to meetings, whatever it takes for me to stay sober, because I know that I'm just one drink or drug away from going back and losing everything that I have gained in my life. And I'm really not willing to do that today. So that's my story. I hope that anybody listening that's still suffering, if you need anything, reach out to me. This is what keeps me sober, is by helping other people. I cannot keep what I have if I don't give it away. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I love what you said. You resonate what a lot of people have said, is that this is what keeps them going, being able to tell their story. I talked to somebody at the very beginning of all this, and when we started this, my goodness, I don't know, 2 months ago now, and she told me, she said, so many times you see the faces of addiction, but you don't see the faces of recovery, and you don't hear the stories of recovery. And so that's one of the main reasons we want to do this, is we want people to know that recovery is possible, and you are a walking billboard for the fact that recovery is possible. And I think that is so awesome to know that you have found what is passionate for you, which is working with individuals with MAT. And I just think that's awesome. And so I want to thank you so much for joining me this evening and telling your story, reaching out to us. This was not something that I did not know him until this evening, as we were talking this evening. And so that was a great way to know that you don't have to be within the Great Rivers community as far as like a partner or anything like that. You can reach out to us via Facebook if you would like to tell your story, which is what Bernard did, and I'm so thankful that he did. And if you or someone have any questions for him, please reach out. Like he said, he is there, and he would love to be able to be there for you. And if you would like to tell your story of recovery, please reach out. Maybe you're a family member and you want to tell how your family members recover, or how your family member's substance use disorder has affected you. You can tell your story here as well. And so we want to make sure that we are giving people a voice, and we want to make sure we're giving them that platform. And so we want to thank you again for tuning in for another episode or series, whatever you want to call it, of our This Is My Story series. And thank you again so much for sharing your story this evening. I truly, truly appreciate it.
Thank you.